And when we started studying this idea, listen to how preposterous this was, Alex. Their proposal was that birth control agents could be put into the municipal food and water supplies, and then they would develop an antidote to the birth control agents in the water, which you could apply to the government for the right to purchase on the New York Stock Exchange. They were literally going to sell these certificates, basically, to have a baby on the New York Stock Exchange. And when we started studying this, it was almost, at times, Alex, I hate to say this, we were laughing. It was so laughable, so funny that these people were dead serious about this.
No, I agree with you, until you realize they're actually doing it through covert means right now. In fact, the carbon tax they're admitting, notice they're now getting rid of the child credit in California. In Australia, they're now going to tax you if you have more than one kid. And they admit this is how the Chinese one-child policy started in 75, became law 81. But go ahead.
Absolutely. The interesting thing is, when we studied this idea of what happened to this idea of putting birth control agents in the food and water supply, the eugenics movement eventually abandoned it and then increased the cause for the legalization of abortion, mainly not because they had a moral problem. These people don't have morals, but they did not abandon the putting the food, doctoring up the food and water supply with birth control because of moral concerns. They abandoned it because they concluded that it was impractical, that you really couldn't do it. One of the eugenicists we talk about in MAFA, one of these people actually said in this UN conference, he was representing the United States on this population council in the UN, he says, look, we couldn't stop the import and sale of alcohol. He said, how are we going to do this with water? He said, all we're going to do is we're going to create a black market for untreated water. He said, we're going to have speakeasies for water if we try to do this. Now, he wasn't opposed to the idea as a philosophy, just that it wasn't practical. And then the idea was put forward about doing this in foreign countries. And it was shot down there because they said the countries whose population we need controlled are the black countries in Africa, and the vast majority of people that live in those countries do not get their food and their water from municipal supplies. They get their water from streams and rivers, and we can't go out there and put this stuff in every stream and river.
But, Mark, here's the big horror. This is what we know they've done. I've seen even BBC articles where they check medically the young girls, 10, 15 years old, that all have HIV, and they haven't even had, their virginity lost. They can medically, as you know, check that.
Right.
And they're going, we don't know where they got it. And they go, oh, maybe the aid workers are using the same needles over and over again. And they've caught them adding sterilization hormones to tetanus shots. That's mainstream news. And we hear about Bill and Melinda Gates giving, tens of billions of dollars with Warren Buffett and the rest of them. And Bill Gates' daddy was the head of Planned Parenthood. And here's the Times of London, billionaire club and bid to curb overpopulation. And you've got all the richest people meeting in a, quote, secret meeting of how to reduce the population. I just want folks to know what's proven and admitted proves these are total criminals. But I'm telling you, it's a lot bigger. But I'm going to try to shut up. Keep going over the film with the history. Okay, so you have the abortion, breakup of the black family. Now they're moved on to everybody, though. They're not just doing this to blacks. It's just the blacks are the apple of their eye. They're the favorite target.
Well, listen, we talk about in the documentary, we were able to get our hands on a document that's called NSSM 200. It was a document that was put out by the United States government, the Justice Department, the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, and the USAID, which is the agency that operates under the State Department through which we fund all of these foreign aid programs. And what that document showed, this document in NSSM 200 was originally classified, and I am absolutely convinced that the Secretary of State's office, which was at that time, this document is often called the Kissinger Report because it was put out by Henry Kissinger. I am convinced they never thought this would be made public, because if they thought it was ever going to be made public, they would not have said some of the things that they were saying in here. But this was a document that was designed to codify or to describe America's policy on controlling the population of what they called underdeveloped or third world countries. And not coincidentally, these countries are all in Africa, and they're all black countries. But in the document, they state that the reason that we have to control the populations of these countries We're not doing it to help them. We're doing it because they have minerals and metals that we need in the United States, and if we don't stabilize and control their populations and reduce their populations, they'll use up their own minerals and metals, and we won't be able to get to them.
And that's a repeat of the British Royal Commission of 49 that says the same thing.
Nothing has changed about this. Nothing has changed about the eugenics movement since Galton first came up with the idea and his cousin Darwin put wings on it. I'm telling you, and people say, well, you're some sort of conspiracy nut. Are you trying to tell me that a bunch of people in the late 1700s, early 1800s come up with these fantastic ideas of controlling the world's population, and they're in conspiracy with people that were not even born for 100 years after that? It's not a matter, a conspiracy does not have to be a situation where a bunch of people get in a room and cook up some idea that they all work together on. A conspiracy, it's what I call the conspiracy of a common agenda. So did France...
It's a program. This is the British Empire, the U.S. robber barons, the royalty,
right.
and I mean, the Romans had handbooks on how to throw diseased blankets over walls to make everybody die. I mean, you know, the Huns were using that 2,000 years ago. This is why elites are in control. They're master planners. They call themselves great architects.
Yeah, so are we stupid enough to suggest that Francis Galton got in a room with Margaret Sanger when they never lived contemporaneously? Obviously, we're not stupid enough to say that.
No, the Rockefeller family picked up those ideas and on records went and funded her as a front, and then she wrote letters to the big foundations, as you know, saying, I've got to get black fronts because they won't trust us white folks.
Right, exactly. And that's what they've done up until this very day, and now we have gone to the point of exporting this. Alex, I want to give you an example of what I believe is the ultimate form of just sheer gall for people to have. When this idea that we would export genocide into these African countries really took on steam was in the late 60s and early 70s. At that time, we had a man appointed to head up this effort in the United States. His name was R.T. Ravenholt. And he was appointed by Nixon to run this population control effort outside the country. They openly stated, and we found the articles and the documents where they openly stated that the United States goal with population control was to sterilize 1/4 of the world's female population. Now, you tell me, where do we get the right, and who has the gall to stand up here and say the United States is going to go outside of its borders and sterilize 1 out of 4 of the females on this earth? Where do we get the gall to do that?
And that was just on the paper.
And that was just on paper. And by
we've got African countries where 45% of the women have HIV.
And Ravenholt, and this was really pushed, not coincidentally, in my view, when the Ford administration, people don't remember this very often, that when you start talking about the Ford administration and Nixon and all that stuff, you forget that Ford's vice president was Nelson Rockefeller. And Rockefeller, Ford, and Kissinger were pushing all this world population control agenda, and it's the same group of people. Every time you investigate something in this, if you dig deep enough, if you peel enough layers of the onion away, you always find the same people at the center of it.
Well, listen, I've gone online and looked at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and their federal filings.
Absolutely.
It's all open eugenics groups, but when you see it on the news, it's, they're helping black people. Isn't Bill Gates sweet? But then on Bill Moyers, he said get rid of the population.
Well, again, you look at what we've done in foreign countries. Let me just propose a hypothetical to you. Let's say that today in France or England or Germany or Australia or Canada, there was some sort of natural catastrophe, and these people need help. Would we help them? We absolutely would. But would our help be contingent upon their accepting the American ideals of birth control and abortion? Would we go into France and say, yeah, we recognize that you got people starving in the streets and you can't help them, and we're here with USAID, but we've got this food and medicine sitting on this ship out in the harbor. We will not unload it until you agree to legalize abortion accept our versions of birth control and family planning and population control. If you do that, we'll unload the ships. If you don't, we're taking them back. We would never do that in a white country. But that has been our standard procedure for the last 50 years in Africa and in other black countries, even in this hemisphere.
But I'll tell you why, sir, and I'm sure you know this. The big secret is, and again, you've done a great job, your research is amazing, you've taught me a lot. This is a sliver just with the blacks, they're the group they're mainly focused on. They don't need to in the white countries because they're all run by the eugenicists, and they've all are pulling the stuff on black, white, it doesn't matter.